Greetings, Battle Buddies Nation. Spencer and I have a special guest for today's show, Travis Irvine. Travis is a filmmaker, he's kind of a politician, he's a writer, and he's just a really funny dude who loves Ohio. More than any of that, though, Travis is truly an interesting human who believes in local politics. Enjoy this conversation that we have with him responsibly. Or not, I'm not your dad.
Okay. The harder the conflict, the greater the triumph.
A theist serpent may be overcome by a swarm of ants.
Lead me, follow me, or get out of my way. Age wrinkles the body, quitting wrinkles the soul.
Sure, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Buddy. We're doing
Battle
it live
buddies.
now.
We're doing it live, folks. We're doing it live.
Now that we got the Cleveland Browns talk out of the way.
Yes, don't let that get public, please.
I don't know if we want our ratings to go that far down if we talk about the Cleveland Browns.
Dude, I do football podcasts, and I will say it's easier to talk politics than Cleveland Browns football.
That's hilarious. Oh man, dude. Well, welcome to Battle Buddies, dude. Obviously, sometimes we talk about, conflicts around the world, but today we're going to be kind of diving in to your world, Mr. Travis Irvine, who is a documentarian. He made he was on American Mayor documentary,
Yep.
which we will have the links for in the bio, and you've written for what are all the publications you've written for, Travis?
Oh, I mean, I think the big ones, at least when I used to live in New York City, Vice, The Guardian, and Huffington Post, probably some of the bigger ones.
Dude, those
Okay.
too hot to handle videos for The Guardian are hilarious.
Oh, good. Oh my God, you found those. That's great.
Yes, they're awesome.
Nice, you found those.
That's very funny. Yeah, I was so proud of those. And then from that series, that's how I ended up over at Vice, was basically because of that series. And then Vice is a whole nother can of worms if you want to talk corporate media.
Well, yeah, dude, please tell us everything. Tell us everything.
Well, I'll give you a synopsis.
Yeah.
When I used to live with Kissel, when we had our place in Brooklyn, it was 2016, right? The craziest political year ever. And then in 2017 is when we actually ran Ben for Brooklyn Borough President, which you guys saw at Hail Yourself America. Great documentary. Check it out, hailyourselfamerica.com.
Yep.
But Vice was like a dream job because it was based in Brooklyn and I could walk there. And then slowly the dream became a nightmare as I realized how awful Vice treated their employees, how every time I went in and they're like, so what are you thinking? You want to pitch us anything? And then you go into these meetings and you pitch stuff and they're like, okay, cool. We'll think about it. And then like a few weeks later, you'll see your idea on TV with someone else in it. Yeah, cooler, younger, hipper, more tattoos. Sometimes it was just Action Bronson doing your bits.
Are you serious? Is that true?
Yeah. And then they would just pay you for the day. They wouldn't pay you for any of the ideas or creativity.
Holy shit.
And the craziest thing for me was I would be in videos, like these interstitials, they call them. Like it's basically, commercials for Vice, but on Vice TV.
Yeah.
Back then it was called Viceland. And so I was on TV in these interstitials like every hour and just doing wacky bits. But I didn't have cable because I'm live with Kissel in Brooklyn and we're like broke. And then I go back home to Ohio and my friends would be like, oh, you're on Viceland like every hour, right? And like, no, I did not know that. And they're you get paid for the day. They don't pay you every time you're on TV. So
Holy shit.
Wow.
that's my story. That being said, they have great snacks. And I ate a lot of snacks at Vice.
The perks of being with Vice. Dude, that's pretty fucked up. That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You've like legitimately changed my entire perspective on Vice, which already was kind of changing on its own because I have turned on Vice recently in life and I'm like, wow, we have taken a turn for the worse over here at Vice. It's not what it used to be, at least.
Right. Well, because they couldn't retain any of the good talent. I mean, honestly, there were people who they got to quit other jobs and then brought them in and then would only have them there for a few months. Like I remember like some editor at Reuters in Mexico City left his job to go to Vice, and then they just like, oops, we hired too many people. And then it's
Damn.
like, so it was just like kind of careless management. So yes, I would say the quality of Vice has declined over the years, but it's all a product of them kind of not knowing what they were doing to begin with in a lot of ways. But at the same time, that's what made them cool.
Right.
That is pretty cool.
So my question was, I read this article that you wrote on dispatch.com about the Brexley bubble and this controversy around, I think it was House Bill 6, and what they called like the biggest scandal in Ohio history.
Wild.
About like racketeering, which I think is something bad. Can you explain, like, is this going to be a movie? And like, what the hell happened?
Well, I don't think I have the energy to make a documentary about it, although I certainly wanted to at some point. But basically, in Ohio,
apologies, everybody. There was a slight glitch with Travis's audio. He begins to answer this question by talking about the RICO case. RICO law is RICO law, I think. I had to look all this up. All right.
Reserved for mobsters and big drug kingpins and things like that in the 90s. Ironically, Rudy Giuliani was one of the U.S. attorneys who first championed these RICO charges in the late 70s and throughout the 1980s. And now he is being charged with this same RICO charge in Georgia as part of this conspiracy to basically rig the electoral votes for an entire state. So in Ohio, at least, what we had was a pretty big scandal in terms of the biggest scandal in Ohio history, where our Speaker of the House was given up to $60 million for an enterprise that he oversaw with some lobbyists. And what they did was they took all this money from an energy company called First Energy out of Akron, Ohio. They actually have their name on the Cleveland Browns stadium, but I believe that has since come off, which is great. I mean, honestly, good for the Browns for doing something right for a change. And First Energy pumped all this money into Larry Householder's his name. It's a very good last name for someone who's Speaker of the House. And he rose to power with all of the money they gave him, literally influenced elections around Ohio where he was getting people elected who would be friendly to him and elect him Speaker of the House. So they passed this giant $1.3 billion bailout to benefit First Energy's companies. And after they did all that, then they also used the money to make sure that their shitty law stayed law. Because in Ohio, you're allowed to like put a ballot on a referendum. Like you can repeal a law with a citizen referendum. And they pulled a bunch of dirty tricks to basically intimidate signature gatherers and people who are trying to do, just basic democracy, gathering signatures and things like that. And they intimidated them and they bought out a bunch of signature gatherers. It was just really dirty campaigning stuff. And as a result of all of that, they essentially protected the shitty bailout law that they passed until July 2020. Turns out the FBI was watching all of it all along and busted Larry Householder, a former Ohio Republican chairman, Matt Borges. That's the guy who I wrote about in my column because he actually lived in my hometown of Bexley, Ohio at the time of his arrest. So I was not happy about that, as you can imagine. And then 3 other guys, and 2 of those other guys pled guilty. One of the guys wrote a tell-all book and committed suicide. So he like totally wasn't guilty. And then the whole thing went to court, and it took 3 years. They just went to trial earlier this year in 2023. But Larry Householder and Matt Borges were both found guilty. And up until this point, sure, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. But as I wrote about in my column, this was the biggest bribery scandal in history. The FBI had all the receipts, all the texts, all the emails. They showed evidence of concealment, which is basically, in a RICO case, is vital. It's when you admit that you're doing something wrong and threaten somebody or tell somebody not to tell anyone, things like that. At that point, you're pretty much busted. So It was fortunately, the biggest bribery scandal in Ohio history. We had two guys go to jail for it. Two guys pled guilty. One guy committed suicide, but there's going to be more charges coming because that's how RICO cases work, and that's what I think you're going to see play out with this Trump indictment too in Georgia. They've charged 18 people. You'll probably see a few of the lower level people plead guilty. You'll see the bigger name people like Trump and Rudy Giuliani try to get away with it, plead negligence or not guilty or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, in RICO cases, if one person admits guilt, it's very easy for it to get to all the other co-conspirators, and that's why the RICO the whole RICO structure in the justice system. That's why it's so vital for them to commit get mobsters and get drug kingpins convicted back in the 70s and 80s. So it's interesting because now what was once used against mobsters is now being used against powerful politicians.
They're very different things.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
No similarities there. Dude,
Damn. There's something about Travis, his unique political praxis. And don't worry, he cut off his dreads to fold together neighborhood threads. Don't worry, he cut off his dreads. He cut off his dreads.
Speaking of candidates, we don't want to take too much more of your time because we know you want to watch the Browns actually win for games that aren't counted towards the regular season.
Don't tell me the score. We'll see what happens.
There's this website called isidewith.com. I don't know if you've seen it or used it, but you basically take this super long test where it goes into depth about all these different concepts and politics and policies and all these different things. And based off of your answers, it tells you who you should choose to be on your ballot, who you would vote for. And one of the interesting things that it asks that I'm kind of curious to hear from you is what are main characteristics that you look for in candidates for, we'll say, the president? Why not? What are some characteristics? For instance, me, I look for intellect and transparency when I'm looking for candidates for presidency. What kind of comes to mind when you look for presidents?
Well, not just presidents, but any political candidate, right?
Sure.
Whether it's local or for state house,
Yeah.
or a federal office. I usually look for integrity and honesty, and I can usually tell if they have that or not based on their record as a public servant, right? So obviously, first-time candidates, if someone comes to my door, right, running for city council, or if I see a lot of yard signs around town for them, I assume that this person must know what they're doing. They're out there. They're putting their message out there. Other people must like them already. That's kind of how I vote super local. But on a federal level, when you make it all the way to the federal level, you've gone through city council and state rep and some county office and then Congress and then Senate, I mean, you're either doing everything right or you're doing everything wrong. And so, as Chuck Schumer used to say, and I was an intern for Chuck Schumer briefly back in 2008. That's one of the things I've talked about on Abe Lincoln's Top Hat. I used to have to get Chuck Schumer's grapefruit and cottage cheese for breakfast in the morning.
Really?
And I used to always forget the Sweet and Low. Sweet and Low is a Brooklyn company, so he needed a Sweet and Low. And I would always forget, and then he would yell at his assistant, and then she would make sure I get the Sweet and Low. But Chuck Schumer, as much of a monster as he was when he didn't get his Sweet and Low, I thought really had a good quote about in the Senate, because he'd been in there forever, just like Joe Biden had been in the Senate for a long time. And that is, there's people that are the real deal, and there's a lot of fakers, so a Ted Cruz is a total faker, but a Bernie Sanders, he's the real deal. He's there to get things done. Even if you don't agree with him, he'll tell you where he stands. He's not playing around. He doesn't take money from lobbyists that he doesn't like or doesn't support their causes. And I think that's very important. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? When a politician says what they mean and does what they say they're going to do, it's very rare for it to happen. And there's just a lot of charlatans who really are there to make themselves rich, make their benefactors rich, make their donors rich, and not really stand up for the people. And you can tell when a real politician is, going to places like my Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Like, he went to East Palestine. He's been a senator for a long time. He's been in public office for a long time. But when it comes to like going to a town that's been devastated by a crazy train derailment where everyone's water is poisoned and everything, he's at least going to go there and literally go to the houses where people are and talk to them and then listen to them. I think that's one thing that always stands out as a good public servant, is they honestly do more listening than they do talking. And that's why I love, local democracy on its purest form, is people going and testifying in front of city halls.
Yeah.
I think we played some very funny clip on Top Hat in the last few months where in Cleveland someone was allowed to go into City Hall and complain about how he was accused of masturbating at the YMCA over and over.
Yeah.
And it's just like, but that's the thing. You go up there with your speech, and the city council, their job is to listen for, 1 to 2 or 4 minutes, however long amount of time you have. That's for me is good public servants. They had their doors open and they had their ears open too.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude. It's interesting. Not even in politics, but in relationships too, whether it be a friendship or a marriage or what have you. Listening is such an astronomical part of being a social species like that of human beings.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If you're a public servant, you're supposed to serve the public. It's not that hard. But again, you when you see politicians like Larry Householder here in Ohio, or whatever corrupt politician is around the next corner, right? There's always people popping into this profession who are in it to get rich and to benefit themselves, and they're not necessarily in it for the right reasons. And that is, as we show in American Mayor and we show in Hail Yourself America, to just benefit your community. It's honestly, maybe it's because I grew up middle class and I don't know what like a $1,000 bill looks like. Even though they do exist, it has Grover Cleveland on it. Fun fact: Grover Cleveland is on the $1,000 bill.
Oh, is that it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have no idea why. I mean, it's crazy. But it's just, I think growing up middle class, your desires to do the right thing and to be well liked by your peers growing up. And so I think that's kind of the magic spot, is when the struggle, when what working people go through, then you are automatically already better prepared to be a public servant than people who come from richer families and things like that. Not saying that richer families can't produce good politicians. Teddy Roosevelt came from a wealthy family, but he was very, very much a man of the people. He used to camp out with cowboys. He used to ride a horse around town when he was campaigning. That kind of stuff, that makes you endearing to the public and to the working people. And I think, at that point, you can talk and they listen. But again, the important thing is that when they talk, you also listen.
Absolutely. What are you running for next, dude? That was an amazing speech you just gave.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm like stoked. I'm like
sold.
pumped up now for some Travis 2024. What's going on, dude?
Well, there was a petition to get me on the ballot in Ohio for president, but I have asked them to take my name off. I think that's too much. I don't think I'm ready to be president. Also, I don't think I would just get, even if I won, I'd only have electoral votes from Ohio. If I stole those from Trump, maybe it would be part of a good process, but I have asked them to knock that off, take my name off the petition. So for now, I just want to do what we're doing here with you all, and what we're doing with Ben Kissel and the Hail Yourself America shows. We really want to take it around the country next year in 2024. We're kind of doing a more of a local California version this year, right? Because we can actually drive to these venues from Los Angeles. But with the big election, it's going to be quite possibly Biden versus Trump again. Even if Trump gets indicted, like he can get nominated and completely can run from jail if he wants. It wouldn't be the first time in this country's history. So Ben and I, we just really want to inspire younger generations, millennials, Gen Zers, to not be afraid of politics, not be turned off by it, to embrace it, to face it head on, as we've We're doing a bunch of great interviews on Top Hat that are going to come out in the next few weeks, and we're just going to try to show people that democracy is not a spectator sport. Like, you do have to get involved, talk to your family, talk to your neighbors, and if you feel compelled, like I know you both have talked about, and you said that at our show in San Francisco. If you feel the time is right, go ahead and stick your neck out there and run for public office, whether it's school board or city council, or even just, on the townhouse administration bureau. I don't know, whatever it is. Take a position in your community if you think it's right, and then that's really how it starts. And if you get the bug and you think you have what it takes, you can move up from there, and you do it again with your community in mind, not necessarily yourself in mind. It's a very selfless act to run for office. And so that's why we just want more and more people to do it. Because at that point, when we're all selfless, then we're all just helping each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at you, dude, with all this motivational talk you got going on. You're like pumping me up, dude.
Well, that's great, because I'm about to go watch the Browns eat shit in Philadelphia.
All right, there you go. Closing question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Closing question. And this is a fun, silly one. All right.
All right.
Favorite fictional president? Are we a President Whitmore fan? Like, his policies on alien invasions are pretty solid. What do we think? Favorite fictional president?
All right. Can I modify your question? This is a classic political trick. Never answer the question that's been asked of you. Answer the question that you wanted to answer.
Okay, give it to me.
And the answer is, my favorite real president in American history is William Henry Harrison. 30 days in and out, short and sweet, no scandals. The only thing he did was get sick and die.
Like,
And
did he die?
that's what I'm saying. Every president should take a note. I want a new president to get sick and die every 30 days.
Right.
And that, my friend, is what you call the solid bedrock of a good democracy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. If you made it this far, we appreciate you, Travis Irvine, for having us be a part of your amazing conversation of getting people involved in local politics. All of the stuff that we talked about that has Travis Irvine in it will be links below in the bio. We just thank you again so much from the bottoms of our heart, man. We appreciate you so much and what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all the fans of Top Hat for being such smart and just very tolerant listeners. That's what I think we have on our side, is that we are more tolerant than a lot of the other people who are actually running for office right now.
Dude, yeah.
And again, even if you're like a diehard conservative, or if you got an uncle who's a diehard conservative, make sure that they remember it's all about individual liberty and personal freedom. And that applies to even people that you may not like.
That's right. That's exactly right. This is a free country at the end of the day. That's what they like to say, right? Free country. Pretty weird. All right.
That's what I've learned from running for office, is that this is America. We all have the right to think we're right.
That's right, man. Well, thank you, man. Go enjoy your Browns game. We appreciate you, and we'll keep in touch over the next couple of years. Okay, we appreciate you.
Thank you both so much. I appreciate you, and good luck with your runs for office.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.